Marcus watched his daughter Emma press her face against the hospital window, her small hand leaving fingerprints on the glass. Outside, other children played in the courtyard while she remained tethered to machines that beeped with mechanical precision. The golden retriever at his feet, Winston, seemed to understand the weight of the momentous therapy dog certification meant nothing here, in this sterile world where hope felt as fragile as Emma's latest test results. When the billionaire's offer came, Marcus had laughed it off. Now, staring at the medical bills scattered across his kitchen table, he wondered if refusing Victoria Sterling had been the biggest mistake of his life. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Marcus Chen still wrapped his hands around the ceramic mug, finding comfort in its familiar weight. The kitchen table was a battlefield of medical bills, insurance forms, and payment plans that stretched into infinity. Each piece of paper represented another sleepless night, another choice between electricity and medication, another conversation with Emma about why they couldn't afford the things other kids took for granted. Winston lay beside his chair, the golden retriever's chin resting on Marcus's foot. The dog's brown eyes tracked every movement, every shift in posture, reading the language of worry that had become Marcus's native tongue over the past 18 months. "Daddy?" Emma's voice carried from the living room, thin and careful. She'd learned not to ask for much. "Yeah, sweetheart?" Winston's being weird again. Marcus found his daughter curled on the couch, her pale skin almost translucent in the afternoon light, filtering through their apartment's single window. Winston had positioned himself directly in front of her, his body rigid with attention, nose pointed toward her chest. "He's just doing his job," Marcus said, sitting beside Emma and pulling her against him. She weighed less than she had 6 months ago, her 7-year-old frame shrinking as the leukemia consumed calories faster than she could replace them. Winston's tail thumped once against the hardwood floor. The dog had started this behavior 3 weeks ago, intense focus on Emma's breathing, positioning himself to detect the subtle changes that preceded her episodes. Marcus had trained Winston as a therapy dog, but the golden retriever had evolved beyond his certification, becoming something approaching a medical device. The knock at the door was sharp, authoritative. Marcus glanced at the wall. Clock 3:40. 7 p.m. Too early for the neighbors, too late for deliveries. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her 50s, silver hair pulled into a precise chignon, wearing a coat that probably cost more than Marcus made in 3 months. Behind her stood a man in a dark suit, hands clasped behind his back, scanning the hallway with professional detachment. "Mr. Chen?" The woman's voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "My name is Victoria Sterling. I'd like to speak with you about your dog." Marcus opened the door but kept the chain engaged. "I'm sorry, who?" "Victoria Sterling. Sterling Pharmaceuticals." She paused, letting the weight of the name settle. "I believe you have a golden retriever named Winston. I'd like to purchase him." The absurdity of the statement made Marcus laugh a sharp, bitter sound. "Lady, I think you've got the wrong apartment." Apartment 4B, Marcus Chen, age 32, works at Hartwell Elementary as a custodian. Father to Emma Chen, currently receiving treatment at Children's Hospital for acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Victoria's recitation was precise, clinical. "Your dog has displayed remarkable behavioral patterns that suggest advanced medical detection capabilities." Marcus's hand tightened on the door. "How do you know about Emma?" "Medical research is a small community, Mr. Chen. Word travels when a therapy dog begins exhibiting diagnostic behaviors without formal training." Victoria reached into her purse, extracting a cream-colored envelope. "I'm prepared to offer you $3 million for Winston." The number hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Marcus stared at the envelope, his mind struggling to process the digits. $3 million. Emma's treatment. The experimental therapy her oncologist had mentioned, the one insurance wouldn't cover. The chance to take her somewhere warm, somewhere far from the gray weight of this city. I need to think about this." Of course. Victoria extended the envelope. My offer, along with my contact information. I'll need an answer by tomorrow evening. Marcus took the envelope, his fingers trembling slightly. The paper felt expensive, substantial. Mr. Chen? Victoria's voice softened marginally. I understand your daughter's condition. I want you to know that Winston would be very well cared for. He would contribute to research that could help children like Emma. The door closed with a soft click, leaving Marcus alone with the envelope and the impossible weight of choice. Daddy? Emma's voice carried from the living room. Who was that? Nobody, sweetheart. Just someone who was lost. But as Marcus returned to the living room, watching Winston curl himself around Emma's feet with protective precision, he wondered who was actually lost. Emma had fallen asleep on the couch, her breathing shallow but steady. Winston's eyes never left her chest, monitoring each rise and fall with mechanical devotion. $3 million. Marcus opened the envelope with careful fingers, as if the paper might disintegrate at rough handling. The letterhead was embossed, official, Sterling Pharmaceuticals, Research and Development Division. The offer was typed in crisp, professional language, but the number at the bottom remained unchanged. $3 million for Winston. He thought about the conversation with Dr. Rodriguez 3 days ago. The clinical trial in Germany. The experimental treatment that showed promise for children with Emma's specific genetic markers. The cost that insurance had dismissed with bureaucratic indifference, $400,000, plus travel and accommodation for 6 months. Winston stirred at Emma's feet, lifting his head to study Marcus with those intelligent brown eyes. The dog had appeared in their lives 18 months ago, a surrender at the animal shelter where Marcus volunteered weekends. No backstory, no explanation, just a golden retriever with perfect manners and an uncanny ability to read human emotion. What do you think, boy? Marcus whispered. Winston's tail thumped once against the couch cushion. The afternoon stretched into evening, shadows creeping across the apartment floor. Marcus made dinner chicken and rice, soft foods that Emma could manage while Winston maintained his vigil. The dog ate mechanically, attention divided between his bowl and Emma's sleeping form. At 7 p.m., Emma woke with the careful precision of someone who'd learned that sudden movements brought pain. She ate 3 bites of chicken, managed half a glass of juice, and asked if she could watch cartoons. Of course, sweetheart. Marcus settled beside her, watching animated characters navigate problems that could be solved in 30 minutes. Winston positioned himself between the couch and the television, eyes fixed on Emma's chest, monitoring the rhythm that had become his entire world. Daddy? Emma's voice was drowsy. Winston loves me, doesn't he? More than anything, Em. More than anything in the world. Good, I love him too. She fell asleep during the second cartoon, her small hand resting on Winston's golden head. Marcus sat in the growing darkness, watching his daughter breathe, counting the medical bills in his head, feeling the weight of Victoria Sterling's envelope in his back pocket. $3 million could save Emma's life. But selling Winston might break her heart. Marcus carried Emma to her bedroom, Winston following like a shadow. The dog took his position beside her bed, chin resting on the mattress, brown eyes reflecting the nightlight's soft glow. In the kitchen, Marcus spread the medical bills across the table again. The numbers had grown familiar, but no less devastating. $43,000 in outstanding balances. Emma's insurance covered the basics, but basics weren't enough for a 7-year-old fighting for her life. The German clinical trial represented hope, real, tangible hope, backed by preliminary results that made Dr. Rodriguez's eyes light up with possibility. But hope had a price tag, and that price tag exceeded everything Marcus had ever owned, borrowed, or dreamed of earning. He opened his laptop, searching for Victoria Sterling. The internet painted her in broad strokes: pharmaceutical heiress, research visionary, woman who'd inherited her father's company and transformed it into a medical research powerhouse. Her net worth was listed in billions, her philanthropic efforts in hundreds of millions, and she wanted Winston. Marcus closed the laptop and walked to Emma's room. Winston looked up as he entered, tail wagging softly against the carpet. Emma slept with the fragile stillness of the sick, her breathing shallow but steady. "I don't know what to do, boy," Marcus whispered. Winston's response was to shift closer to Emma's bed, pressing his nose against her small hand. The dog's devotion was absolute, uncomplicated by the mathematics of survival that kept Marcus awake at night. $3 million, a chance at the German trial, a chance at life, but Emma, without Winston, was like asking her to breathe underwater. The dog wasn't just her companion, he was her early warning system, her comfort, her constant, in a world that had become unpredictable and frightening. Marcus returned to the kitchen, poured himself a whiskey he couldn't afford, and stared at Victoria Sterling's envelope. The cream paper seemed to glow under the overhead light, promising salvation and demanding sacrifice in equal measure. His phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Rodriguez. "Marcus, I need to discuss Emma's latest results. Can you come in tomorrow morning?" The glass trembled in Marcus's hand. Emma's latest results. In 18 months of treatment, those words had never preceded good news. He typed back, "Of course. What time?" 9 a.m. "Bring Emma, if she's feeling up to it." Marcus set the phone down and finished his whiskey. Outside, the city continued its evening rhythm, traffic lights cycling through their colors, people returning home from jobs that paid enough to keep their children healthy. Victoria Sterling's envelope lay on the table like a loaded gun. $3 million for Winston. A chance to save Emma. A choice between his daughter's life and her happiness. Marcus walked to Emma's room. "One more time." Winston lifted his head as he entered, brown eyes reflecting the hallway light. Emma slept peacefully, one small hand curled around the dog's ear. "Tomorrow we find out what Dr. Rodriguez has to say," Marcus whispered to Winston. "Then we decide." Winston's tail thumped twice against the carpet, as if he understood the weight of the coming decision. Marcus returned to the kitchen and placed Victoria Sterling's envelope in the drawer beside the medical bills. $3 million, sealed in cream paper, waiting for an answer that could change everything, or destroy it. The waiting room at Children's Hospital smelled like industrial disinfectant and false hope. Marcus sat with Emma curled against his side, Winston's head resting on her lap. The dog's therapy vest drew smiles from other patients, but Marcus could see the careful distance parents maintained as if proximity to another sick child might somehow transfer misfortune. Emma's fingers worked through Winston's golden fur with practiced ease, finding comfort in the repetitive motion. She'd been quiet during the drive, understanding without words that Dr. Rodriguez's urgent request carried weight. "Mr. Chen? Emma?" A nurse appeared at the reception desk, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Rodriguez is ready for you." The walk down the hallway felt endless. Winston's nails clicked against the polished floor, the sound echoing off walls lined with children's artwork, bright crayon drawings that tried to mask the gravity of what happened behind these doors. "Dr. Actor and Ask A. Zhao, by W." Rodriguez stood as they entered, her expression carefully neutral. She was a small woman, with kind eyes and steady hands, someone who'd learned to deliver impossible news, with clinical precision wrapped in human compassion. "Please, sit." She gestured to the chairs facing her desk. Winston positioned himself beside Emma's chair, body alert, sensing the tension that filled the room like static electricity. "How are you feeling today, Emma?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "Okay, I guess." Emma's voice was small. "Winston thinks something's wrong, though. He's been extra careful with me." Dr. Rodriguez glanced at Marcus, then back at Emma. "Winston is very smart. We have your latest test results, and I wanted to talk to you both about what they show." Marcus felt his chest tighten. Emma's hand found Winston's head, her fingers tangling in his fur. "The treatment we've been using isn't working as well as we'd hoped," Dr. Rodriguez continued. "Your white cell count has increased, and the blasts we were targeting are becoming more aggressive." The words landed like physical blows. Marcus had prepared himself for this possibility, but preparation felt meaningless when faced with his daughter's quiet acceptance of news that should devastate any 7-year-old. "What does that mean?" Emma asked. It means we need to try something different, something stronger. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. There's a clinical trial in Germany that I believe could help you. The treatment is specifically designed for children with your genetic markers. Marcus's throat felt raw. The experimental therapy. We talked about this before. Yes, but Emma's condition has progressed to the point where this may be our best option. Dr. Rodriguez opened a folder, extracting several sheets of paper. The trial has shown remarkable results in preliminary studies. 68% remission rate for children with Emma's specific markers. 68%. The number hung in the air like a lifeline thrown from a sinking ship. What would it involve? Marcus asked. 6 months in Munich. Intensive treatment, but the facility is world-class. They have family accommodations, and Emma would be eligible for immediate enrollment if we can secure funding. The word funding echoed in Marcus's mind. He thought of Victoria Sterling's envelope, still sitting in his kitchen drawer, waiting for an answer. How much? He asked, though he already knew. $400,000, plus living expenses. I know it's substantial, but there are programs, foundations. Dr. Rodriguez, Marcus interrupted gently. How long do we have to decide? The pause was microscopic, but Marcus caught it. I'd recommend we begin the application process within the next 2 weeks. Emma's condition is stable, but she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Emma looked up at Marcus, her dark eyes too old for her 7-year-old face. Daddy, if I go to Germany, can Winston come with me? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He glanced at Dr. Biolita Rodriguez, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. Sweetheart, international travel with animals is complicated, and the treatment facility has very strict rules about, but he's my medical dog, Emma said, her voice gaining strength. He knows when I'm getting sick before I do. He helps me. I know he does, baby. But Germany is very far away, and no. Emma's hand tightened in Winston's fur. I won't go without Winston. I can't. Dr. Rodriguez cleared her throat softly. Mr. Chen, could I speak with you privately for a moment? Emma, would you be okay waiting here with Winston? In the hallway, Dr. Rodriguez closed the door behind them and spoke in low, urgent tones. Marcus, I need you to understand something. Emma's condition is deteriorating faster than we anticipated. This trial in Germany, it's not just her best option. It may be her only option. Marcus leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of the building pressing down on him. But she won't go without the dog. Dogs can't be admitted to the treatment facility. It's a sterile environment, and the protocols are absolute. Dr. Rodriguez paused. But Marcus, if we don't act soon... She didn't finish, but the implication hung between them like a sword. Marcus returned to the office to find Emma whispering to Winston, her small hands cupping the dog's face. Winston's tail wagged softly, his brown eyes fixed on hers with absolute devotion. Daddy? Emma looked up as he entered. Winston says he understands. He says sometimes people have to do hard things to help the people they love. Marcus's throat closed. Sweetheart, I know you're worried about the money, Emma said, her voice carrying a gravity that should have been impossible at 7. But maybe there's a way. That evening, Marcus sat in his kitchen with Victoria Sterling's envelope open before him. The offer letter was precise, professional, outlining terms that seemed almost surreal in their generosity. $3 million for Winston, with the provision that the dog would be well cared for and contribute to medical research. Medical research that could help children like Emma. Marcus picked up his phone and dialed the number printed at the bottom of the letter. It rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Sterling Pharmaceuticals, Victoria Sterling's office. This is Marcus Chen. Ms. Sterling wanted an answer about my dog. Of course, Mr. Chen. Please hold. The hold music was classical, elegant. Marcus closed his eyes and pictured Emma's face when she realized Winston was gone. Then he pictured her in Germany, fighting for her life without the dog who'd become her anchor to the world. Mr. Chen? Victoria Sterling's voice was warm, expectant. I trust you've had time to consider my offer? I have a question first, Marcus said. This research you mentioned, what exactly would Winston be doing? Medical detection training. We're developing protocols for early disease identification using canine olfactory capabilities. Winston's natural talent for detecting your daughter's episodes suggests remarkable potential. And he'd be treated well? Mr. Chen, Winston would live better than most humans. Private veterinary care, specialized training, comfortable accommodations. He'd be contributing to research that could save thousands of lives. Marcus thought of Emma in the hospital bed, tubes and machines surrounding her like mechanical guardians. He thought of 68% odds and $400,000, and the choice between his daughter's life and her happiness. I need one condition, he said finally. Name it. I want regular updates, photos, videos, reports on how he's doing. And if your research is successful, if Winston helps develop something that could help other kids like Emma, I want to know about it. Of course. Is that a yes, Mr. Chen? Marcus stared at the medical bills scattered across his table. $43,000 in debt, with Emma's treatment costs climbing daily. The German trial represented hope, but hope had a price. It's a yes, he whispered. Excellent. I'll have my team handle the arrangements. The transfer can take place tomorrow afternoon, and the funds will be available immediately. Victoria paused. Mr. Chen, I want you to know that Winston will be helping to save lives. Your sacrifice is contributing to something much larger. Marcus hung up and walked to Emma's room. She was asleep, one small hand resting on Winston's head. The dog looked up as Marcus entered, brown eyes reflecting the hallway light. I'm sorry, boy, Marcus whispered. I'm so sorry. Winston's tail thumped once against the carpet as if he understood. Marcus returned to the kitchen and called Dr. Rodriguez's emergency line. This is Marcus Chen. I need to talk to you about the German trial. We found funding. The next morning, Marcus woke early and made pancakes Emma's favorite breakfast, though she rarely ate more than a few bites anymore. Winston sat beside her chair, accepting small pieces of pancake with gentle precision. Daddy, you're acting weird, Emma observed, studying his face with the uncomfortable perception that serious illness had taught her. Just thinking about stuff, sweetheart. What kind of stuff? Marcus sat across from her, watching Winston's attentive posture as the dog monitored Emma's every breath. Emma, Dr. Rodriguez called back last night. The people in Germany said you can start the treatment next week. Emma's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Really? Really? We found a way to pay for it. How? The question he'd dreaded. Marcus had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times, but facing Emma's trusting eyes made every prepared word feel like betrayal. Someone offered to help us, he said carefully. But there's something we need to talk about. Emma set down her fork, her small hands folding in her lap. Winston moved closer to her chair, sensing the shift in emotional temperature. The treatment in Germany is very serious. The doctors there have strict rules about everything, including animals. Emma's face went pale. Winston can't come. No, sweetheart, he can't. The silence stretched between them like a bridge about to collapse. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She'd learned, over 18 months of treatments and hospitals and bad news, that crying didn't change the things that mattered. How long would I be gone? She asked. 6 months. And Winston would stay here? Marcus's chest tightened. Winston is going to go somewhere where he can help other kids who are sick, like you. Emma's head snapped up, her dark eyes suddenly fierce. You sold him. The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Emma, you sold Winston. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Someone paid you money, and you sold my dog. It's not that simple. How much? Marcus stared at his 7-year-old daughter, seeing in her face a hardness that should have taken decades to develop. Emma, how much money was I worth? The question hung in the air like a blade. Emma stood from her chair, Winston rising with her, his body tense with confusion. $3 million, Marcus said quietly. Emma's face didn't change. She nodded once, as if confirming something she'd already known. When? she asked. This afternoon. Emma looked down at Winston, her small hands tangling in his golden fur. The dog's tail wagged softly, his brown eyes moving between Emma and Marcus with growing uncertainty. I understand, Emma said finally. You had to choose between saving my life and keeping Winston. You chose my life. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. Emma, I know, Daddy. I know you didn't want to. Emma's voice carried a gentleness that broke Marcus's heart. But I need you to know something. She knelt beside Winston, wrapping her thin arms around his neck. I would rather die with Winston than live without him. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that had already consumed everything worth saving. Marcus stared at his daughter, this 7-year-old who spoke of death with the calm acceptance of someone 3 times her age, and felt something fundamental shift inside his chest. Emma, I'm not trying to be mean, Daddy. She buried her face in Winston's neck, her voice muffled against his golden fur. I know you love me. I know you're trying to save me, but Winston isn't just my dog. He's part of me. Marcus knelt beside them, his hands trembling as he reached for Emma's shoulders. Sweetheart, the treatment in Germany could cure you. You could live a normal life, go to school, make friends. Without Winston, it wouldn't be my life. Emma lifted her head, her dark eyes steady and impossibly old. It would be someone else's life in my body. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Marcus checked his watch. 11:30 a.m. Victoria Sterling's people were early. That's them, isn't it? Emma asked. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Emma stood slowly, Winston rising with her, his body pressed against her legs as if he could shelter her from what was coming. She walked to the window and peered through the blinds. A black sedan sat at the curb, engine running. 2 people in dark suits stood beside it, waiting with professional patience. They brought a fancy car, Emma observed. I guess Winston's going to live somewhere really nice. The casual acceptance in her voice was worse than screaming would have been. Marcus felt his resolve cracking like ice under pressure. Emma, what if I called them? What if I said we changed our minds? Emma turned from the window, her expression gentle but firm. Then in 3 months, when the treatment money runs out and I get sicker, you'll blame yourself for letting me die when you could have saved me. The doorbell rang again. And I'll blame myself, Emma continued, for being selfish, for choosing my happiness over my life. Marcus stared at his daughter, this small person who'd somehow learned to navigate impossible choices with more wisdom than most adults possessed. The weight of her acceptance felt heavier than any medical bill, any sleepless night, any prayer whispered in hospital corridors. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. Emma walked to him, her small hand finding his. We'll do it together. The doorbell rang a 3rd time. Marcus opened the door to find Victoria Sterling herself, flanked by 2 assistants and a veterinarian carrying a transport crate. She wore the same expensive coat, but her expression was softer than it had been the day before. Mr. Chen, I hope you don't mind, I wanted to handle this personally. Miss Sterling. Marcus stepped aside, allowing them to enter. This is my daughter, Emma. Victoria's gaze settled on Emma, taking in the pale skin, the too thin frame, the gravity that illness had etched into her young face. When she looked at Winston, pressed protectively against Emma's side, her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Hello, Emma. I'm Victoria. I understand Winston is very special to you. Emma nodded but didn't speak. I want you to know, Victoria continued, kneeling to Emma's level, that Winston will be helping other children who are sick, just like you. He's going to learn how to detect illness early, so doctors can help kids before they get really sick. Like an early warning system, Emma said quietly. Exactly like that. Emma looked up at Marcus, then back at Victoria. Will he be happy? Victoria's pause was brief, but Marcus caught it. He'll be well cared for. He'll have other dogs to play with and people who understand how special he is. That's not what I asked. The directness of Emma's question seemed to catch Victoria off guard. She studied the 7-year-old for a long moment, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. I don't know. Victoria said finally. "But I promise we'll do everything we can to make sure he is." Emma nodded, accepting the honest answer with more grace than most adults would have shown. She knelt beside Winston, her hands finding the familiar comfort of his fur. "Hey boy," she whispered, "remember when we first met? You were in that cage at the shelter, and you looked so sad. But when Daddy brought you home, you got happy again." Winston's tail wagged softly, his brown eyes fixed on Emma's face. "Now you're going to help other kids like me. That's a really important job." Emma's voice remained steady, but tears had started to track down her cheeks. "I need you to be brave, okay? Even when you miss me, I need you to remember that you're helping people." She unclipped his therapy vest, folding it carefully in her lap. "You won't need this anymore. You're going to learn new things, important things." Marcus felt his own eyes burning. He'd prepared for Emma to fight, to scream, to make this impossible. He hadn't prepared for her to be stronger than he was. "Emma," Victoria said quietly, "would you like to see where Winston will be living? I could show you pictures." "No." Emma shook her head, still focused on Winston. "If I see pictures, I'll want to come visit. And if I want to visit, I'll think about him all the time instead of getting better." She pressed her face against Winston's neck one last time, breathing in his familiar scent. "I love you, Winston, forever and always, even when we're apart." Winston seemed to sense the finality of the moment. His tail stopped wagging, and he pressed closer to Emma as if he could somehow merge with her and make separation impossible. "We should," Victoria gestured toward the transport crate, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Emma stood, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Okay." The veterinarian approached with gentle professionalism, speaking to Winston in soothing tones as he guided the dog toward the crate. Winston went willingly, but his eyes never left Emma's face. "Wait," Emma said suddenly. Everyone froze. Emma pulled a small stuffed rabbit from her pocket-worn gray fur, one eye missing. Clearly beloved. She'd carried it through every hospital visit, every treatment, every sleepless night. "This is Mr. Bunny," she said, placing the toy in the crate beside Winston. "He's been with me since I was little. I want Winston to have something that smells like home." Winston sniffed the stuffed rabbit, then settled beside it, his golden body curled protectively around the small toy. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Victoria cleared her throat, extracting a tablet from her briefcase. "The transfer is electronic. $3 million, deposited directly into your account." Marcus signed where she indicated, his signature shaky but legible. The money appeared on his phone's banking app with surreal immediacy. $3 million, enough to save Emma's life, enough to give her the future she deserved, the price of Winston's freedom. "Mr. Chen," Victoria said as her assistants prepared to leave, "I want you to have this." She handed him a card with her personal number. "Updates, as we discussed. But also, if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to call." The black sedan pulled away from the curb, carrying Winston toward a future none of them could fully imagine. Marcus and Emma stood at the window, watching until the car disappeared around the corner. The apartment felt hollow without Winston's presence. The spaces where he'd slept, the corners where his toys had been scattered, the way sound seemed to echo differently without his breathing to fill the silence. "Daddy?" Emma's voice was small. "Yeah, sweetheart? Did we do the right thing?" Marcus pulled her close, feeling the fragility of her small body against his chest. "I don't know, Em. I honestly don't know." "Will it get easier?" "I don't know that either." Emma was quiet for a long moment, her breathing steady against his shirt. "Dr. Rodriguez said the treatment in Germany works for kids like me. 68% success rate. Those are good odds. Very good odds. Then maybe." Emma pulled back to look at him, her dark eyes bright with unshed tears. "Maybe Winston will help other kids, and I'll get better, and someday we'll both be helping people. Just separately." Marcus felt tears burning his throat. "Maybe, sweetheart, maybe." That afternoon, Dr. Rodriguez called to confirm Emma's acceptance into the German trial. The funding had been verified, Travel arrangements were being made, and they could leave for Munich within the week. Emma listened to the conversation from the couch, curled in the spot where Winston used to sleep. She didn't ask questions, didn't offer commentary. She simply absorbed the information with the same quiet acceptance she'd shown all day. 1 week, Marcus said after hanging up. Okay. Are you scared? Emma considered the question seriously. Yes, but not about the treatment. What are you scared about? That I'll forget what Winston feels like. That I'll forget the way he smells or the sound he makes when he's dreaming. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, discussing her fears with the same calm she'd used to discuss her illness. I don't want to forget him. Marcus sat beside her, pulling her close. You won't forget. Love doesn't work that way. How do you know? Because I still remember your mom. Every day. The way she laughed, the way she hummed when she cooked, the way she used to braid your hair. Marcus's voice caught slightly. Love leaves marks that don't fade, Em. Winston will always be part of you, no matter where you are. Emma was quiet for a long time, processing this promise. Outside, the city continued its evening rhythm, people returning home to families and pets, and the ordinary complications of life. Daddy? Yeah? When I get better, when the treatment works and I'm healthy again, do you think we could visit Winston? Just to see how he's doing? Marcus thought about Victoria Sterling's card in his wallet, about promises made and prices paid and the uncertain future that stretched ahead of them. I think, he said carefully, that anything is possible. Emma smiled for the first time that day, a small, fragile expression that held more hope than Marcus had seen in months. Anything is possible, she repeated, as if testing the words for truth. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, distant lights offering their own quiet promises to anyone brave enough to believe in impossible things. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the Munich airport with Emma beside him, both of them changed in ways that defied simple description. Emma's hair had grown back in soft curls, darker than before, and her cheeks held color that hadn't been there since her diagnosis. The experimental treatment had worked, not just the 68% success they'd hoped for, but complete remission, her latest scans showing no trace of the disease that had nearly claimed her life. But it was her eyes that showed the deepest change. The premature gravity was still there, the understanding that came from facing mortality at 7 years old, but now it was tempered with something else. The quiet confidence of someone who had stared into darkness and found their way back to light. The plane doesn't leave for 2 hours, Marcus said, checking his watch. Want to get something to eat? Emma nodded, but her attention was elsewhere, scanning the terminal with an intensity that had become familiar over the past months. She was looking for golden fur, brown eyes, the ghost of a presence that had shaped her understanding of love and loss. The treatment in Munich had been brutal but effective. Weeks of intensive chemotherapy, radiation, experimental drug combinations that pushed Emma's small body to its limits. Marcus had watched his daughter endure procedures that would break most adults, all while maintaining a composure that awed the medical staff. But the hardest moments hadn't been the treatments themselves. They'd been the quiet times falling asleep without Winston's steady breathing beside her bed, waking from nightmares without his warm presence to comfort her, celebrating small victories without his tail-wagging celebration. Emma had adapted as children do, but adaptation wasn't the same as healing. Some wounds, Marcus had learned, required more than medical intervention. Daddy, Emma said as they found seats in the terminal cafe, when we get home, will you call Miss Sterling? Marcus had been expecting this question for weeks. Do you want me to? I want to know how Winston is doing. I want to know if he's happy. Over the past 6 months, Victoria Sterling had kept her promise about updates. Photos arrived monthly. Winston in a state-of-the-art facility, working with other dogs, learning complex detection protocols. The pictures showed a healthy animal, well-fed and obviously cared for, but Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs of his daughter's emotional intelligence. You can tell he misses us, Emma had said about the most recent photo. Look at his eyes. Marcus had looked and seen what Emma saw, a flatness in Winston's gaze that spoke of work, performed dutifully but without joy. I'll call her, Marcus promised. They boarded the flight to New York in the late afternoon, Emma settling into her window seat with the practiced ease of someone who'd become accustomed to travel. The treatment had required multiple trips between Munich and satellite facilities across Europe, turning an 7-year-old into a surprisingly sophisticated traveler. As the plane lifted off, Emma pressed her face to the window, watching Munich disappear beneath the clouds. "I'm going to miss Dr. Hoffman," she said quietly. Dr. Hoffman had been Emma's primary oncologist in Munich, a stern woman with kind hands, who'd guided them through the treatment protocol with unwavering precision. She'd also been the one to deliver the news 3 weeks ago. Complete remission, treatment successful, no need for follow-up beyond routine monitoring. "She saved your life," Marcus said. "Winston started it, though. If he hadn't been watching me so carefully, if he hadn't noticed when I was getting sick before I did." Emma's voice trailed off. Dr. Hoffman said that early detection was part of why the treatment worked so well. It was true. Emma's case had become something of a teaching example: early intervention based on behavioral observation leading to optimal treatment outcomes. Winston's instinctive monitoring had caught the disease's progression at a crucial stage, creating the window of opportunity that had made the Munich trial possible. The flight was long, 13 hours of controlled air and recycled thoughts. Emma slept fitfully, waking periodically to check the progress on the seatback monitor. Marcus watched her sleep and marveled at the resilience of children, their ability to bend without breaking under pressures that would shatter most adults. They landed at JFK at sunset, New York City spreading below them like a circuit board of light and possibility. Emma was quiet during the taxi ride home, watching familiar landmarks slide past the window with the strange disconnection of someone returning to a place that felt both deeply known and somehow foreign. Their apartment looked smaller than Marcus remembered, the spaces where Winston used to sleep now filled with furniture they'd rearranged before leaving for Germany. But Emma went straight to the living room, to the corner where Winston's bed used to be, and stood there for a long moment. "It still smells a little bit like him," she said. Marcus set down their luggage and joined her, breathing in the faint scent that lingered despite months of absence. "Maybe we should get another dog," he suggested gently. Emma shook her head immediately. "No, that would be like trying to replace part of myself." That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus called Victoria Sterling. The phone rang twice before her familiar voice answered. "Mr. Chen, how is Emma?" "Healthy, complete remission. The doctors in Munich said the early detection was crucial to the treatment's success." "That's wonderful news, truly wonderful." Victoria paused. "And how are you both adjusting to being home?" Marcus looked toward Emma's room, where his daughter slept without the comfort that had sustained her through her first 7 years of life. "We're managing. But Emma asked me to call. She wants to know how Winston is doing." The pause was longer this time. "Winston is. He's excelling at his training. His detection accuracy is remarkable, 94% success rate in identifying early-stage cancers across multiple types. He's contributing to research that will save thousands of lives." "But," Marcus heard something in Victoria's voice, a carefully controlled uncertainty. "But he's not. He's not thriving the way we'd hoped. He performs his tasks perfectly, responds to commands, maintains his health. But there's something missing. Our veterinary psychologist believes he's experiencing a form of depression." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "What does that mean?" "It means he's going through the motions of life without engaging with it. He eats, sleeps, works, but he doesn't play. He doesn't seek affection. He exists rather than lives." The description hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Is there anything you can do?" "We've tried various interventions. Companion animals, enrichment activities, modified schedules. Nothing has restored his vitality." Victoria's voice softened. "Mr. Chen, I have a proposition for you." Marcus waited. "I'd like to bring Winston to visit Emma. Not permanently," Victoria added quickly, "but a visit. A few hours, maybe a day, to see if, well, to see if proximity to Emma might help both of them. Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. The separation had been devastating enough reopening that wound seemed cruel to everyone involved. But then he thought of Emma standing in Winston's empty corner, breathing in faded scents and trying to hold on to memories that were already beginning to blur. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow, if that works for you. I could bring him by personally." Marcus closed his eyes, seeing Emma's face when she'd said goodbye to Winston 6 months ago. The way she'd pressed her stuffed rabbit into the transport crate, as if she could somehow send a piece of herself along with him. "Emma doesn't know you're calling," Marcus said. "Of course not. This decision should be yours and hers together." Marcus hung up and walked to Emma's room. She was awake, staring at the ceiling with the thoughtful expression that had become familiar during their months in Germany. "How did Miss Sterling sound?" Emma asked without looking at him. "How did you know?" "You get a different voice when you're talking to important people." Emma sat up in bed, her dark eyes serious. "Is Winston okay?" Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "He's healthy. He's doing important work, but Miss Sterling thinks he might be lonely." Emma processed this information with the same careful consideration she'd applied to medical decisions and treatment options. "He misses us." "It sounds that way. Does Miss Sterling want to bring him for a visit?" Marcus stared at his daughter, constantly amazed by her ability to cut through complexity to reach the heart of any situation. "How did you—" "It's what I would want to do. If I had someone's dog, and the dog was sad, and I could afford to bring them together for a little while, that's what I would do." Emma lay back down, pulling her blanket up to her chin. "Can you tell her yes? Are you sure? Seeing him and then saying goodbye again? Daddy?" Emma interrupted gently. "Some things are worth the pain." The next morning dawned clear and bright. Spring asserting itself with the kind of determined optimism that made New York beautiful despite itself. Emma woke early and dressed carefully, not in the casual clothes she'd favored during recovery, but in her favorite dress, the blue one with small flowers that she'd worn to school concerts and birthday parties in the time before illness had redefined her world. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," Marcus said over breakfast. "I want to look good for Winston. I want him to see that I'm better now." At 10 a.m., the familiar black sedan pulled up outside their building. Marcus and Emma watched from the window as Victoria Sterling emerged, followed by a handler leading a golden retriever on a leash. Even from 4 floors up, they could see that Winston looked different, bigger, more muscular from consistent exercise and quality nutrition. His coat gleamed with health, and his posture spoke of professional training and discipline. But when the handler guided him toward the building entrance, Winston's steps were mechanical, perfunctory. He moved like a machine executing programming rather than a dog exploring his environment. "He looks sad," Emma observed quietly. The knock at the door came exactly at 10:15. Marcus opened it to find Victoria Sterling with Winston at her side, both of them still and formal, as if posing for a portrait. Winston looked up at Marcus with polite recognition, tail wagging once in acknowledgement, before returning to alert stillness. The enthusiasm, the joy, the boundless affection that had defined his personality, all of it was muted, professional, controlled. "Hello, Mr. Chen," Victoria said. "Winston. You remember Marcus?" Winston's tail wagged again, a careful, measured response. Then Emma appeared in the doorway. The change was instantaneous and profound. Winston's entire body seemed to come alive, vibrating with an energy that had been absent moments before. His tail wagged with genuine enthusiasm, his eyes brightened, and he made a soft, whining sound that spoke of months of suppressed longing. But he didn't move. His training held him in place, awaiting permission from his handler. "Winston," Emma said softly. "Hey, boy." At the sound of her voice, Winston's careful composure cracked completely. He looked up at Victoria with pleading eyes, his whole body trembling with the effort of remaining still. "It's okay," Victoria said quietly. "Go ahead." Winston crossed the space between them in 2 bounds, pressing himself against Emma with desperate affection. His tail wagged so hard his entire rear end moved, and he made small sounds of joy and relief that seemed to express 6 months of accumulated longing. Emma dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around Winston's neck and burying her face in his fur. "I missed you so much," she whispered. "I missed you so much, boy." Winston's response was to press closer, as if he could somehow merge with Emma and ensure they were never separated again. He sniffed her hair, her hands, her clothes, reading the story of the past 6 months in scent markers invisible to human perception. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes as he watched his daughter and her dog remember what it meant to be complete. Victoria Sterling watched the reunion with an expression Marcus couldn't quite read: professional satisfaction mixed with something that might have been regret or recognition or both. "He's been waiting for this," she said quietly. Emma looked up from Winston's embrace, her face bright with the first genuine happiness Marcus had seen since their return from Germany. "Sterling," Emma said, "thank you for taking such good care of him. He looks really healthy." "He's been an exceptional working dog," Victoria replied. "His contributions to our research have been invaluable." Emma nodded seriously, understanding the importance of Winston's work even as she continued to stroke his golden fur. "But he's not happy, is he?" The directness of the question seemed to surprise Victoria. "Why do you ask?" "Because I know Winston. He's doing what you ask him to do because he's a good dog and he wants to help people, but his eyes look the same way mine did when I was sick, like he's somewhere else, just going through the motions." Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying the 7-year-old who spoke about emotional complexity with startling clarity. "You're very perceptive, Emma. I had to learn to be. When you're sick, you get good at reading people's faces, figuring out what they're not telling you." Emma's hand found Winston's head, her fingers working through his fur with practiced ease. "Winston taught me that. He always knew how I was feeling before I did." Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, her expensive coat pooling around her on the apartment floor. "Emma, can I ask you something?" Emma nodded. "Do you think Winston would be happier if he came home?" Emma's face went very still. She looked at Winston, then at Marcus, then back at Victoria. "Are you asking if I want him back?" "I'm asking what you think would be best for Winston." Emma was quiet for a long time, her hand moving rhythmically through Winston's fur as she considered the question. Winston seemed to sense the gravity of the moment, pressing closer to her side while keeping his brown eyes fixed on her face. "Winston saved my life," Emma said finally. "Not just by detecting my cancer early, but by loving me when I felt unlovable. By staying with me when everything else was scary and uncertain." Victoria waited. "And then I saved his life by letting him go, by letting him do important work even though it broke my heart." Emma's voice was steady, matter of fact. "But if Winston is sad now, if he's not living, instead of just existing, then maybe the best way to save each other is to be together." Emma looked up at Marcus, then at Victoria. "But I need to know that his work will continue, that other kids will still get help." Victoria smiled, the first completely genuine expression Marcus had seen from her. "Emma, what if I told you that Winston could do both? That we could arrange for him to live with you and continue contributing to our research? Home visits, regular check-ins, ongoing training that he could do while living here?" Emma's eyes widened. "Is that possible? For a dog like Winston, with an owner like you? I think we could make it work." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of tension he'd carried for 6 months. "What would that look like?" "Winston would come home," Victoria said, her attention focused on Emma. "He'd continue his medical detection training on a part-time basis, maybe 1 week per month at our facility. The rest of the time, he'd be here with you." Emma looked down at Winston, who seemed to understand that his future was being decided. His tail wagged hopefully, his brown eyes moving between Emma and Victoria with obvious intelligence. "What do you think, Winston?" Emma asked softly. "Do you want to come home?" Winston's response was to lick Emma's face with enthusiastic affection, his tail wagging so hard it created a small windstorm in the apartment. Emma laughed, the first real laugh Marcus had heard from her since before her diagnosis. The sound filled the apartment like sunlight, warm and natural and healing. "I think that's a yes," she said. Victoria Sterling stood, brushing off her expensive coat with careful precision. But her eyes remained soft, focused on the reunion unfolding before her. "There will be paperwork," she said to Marcus. "Contracts, schedules, protocols. But if this is what you both want—" "It's what we want," Emma said firmly. "Winston belongs with us. We belong with Winston." Victoria nodded, then surprised them both by reaching into her purse and extracting a familiar gray shape. Mr. Bunny, worn and beloved, one eye still missing. "He's been sleeping with this every night," she said, handing the stuffed rabbit to Emma. "I think it's what kept him connected to you." Emma clutched Mr. Bunny to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Winston nuzzled the toy, recognizing its scent, his tail wagging with renewed enthusiasm. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "Thank you for bringing him home." Victoria Sterling collected her things and prepared to leave, but paused at the door. "Emma?" "Yes, ma'am?" "Your father made the hardest choice a parent can make, sacrificing something precious to save someone more precious. But you," Victoria's voice caught slightly, "you made an even harder choice. You let go of love to save love. That's wisdom most adults never learn." After Victoria left, Marcus and Emma sat on the living room floor with Winston between them, the golden retriever's head resting across both their laps as if he could anchor them together through physical contact. "Daddy?" Emma said softly. "Yeah, sweetheart? Do you think sometimes the right choice and the happy choice can be the same thing?" Marcus looked at his daughter, healthy and radiant, with Winston's warm weight across their legs and afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. "I think," he said carefully, "that sometimes we have to make the hard choices first before we can recognize the happy ones." Emma smiled, her fingers working through Winston's fur with the contentment of someone who had traveled far from home and finally found their way back. "Sometimes the best gifts come disguised as losses," she said, her voice carrying wisdom earned through months of separation and healing. Outside, the city hummed with its eternal rhythm of hope and heartbreak, but inside their small apartment, three souls who had learned the true weight of love sat quietly together, measuring their wealth not in money or success, but in the simple miracle of being reunited. Winston's breathing settled into the familiar pattern that had once monitored Emma's health, but now simply celebrated the rhythm of a life they would face together, whatever challenges lay ahead.